Welcome. So hopefully you've had a chance to see the reels put together showing this hutch and how I've disassembled it to this point. Taken the top glass doors off, taken all of the hardware off, the doors on the bottom as well. I'm going to show you the last couple of things that I do on here to prep it so it's ready to be painted and finished. And one of them is going to be removing the glass panels out of the doors to make it easier to paint. And if you don't want to use the glass, you can get rid of them. It makes it a lot easier that way. So let me show you a couple of things that I like to do as I end up finishing this off. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my hinges or my handles, and I'm going to get a measurement from the center of each one. I don't know if you can see that here. So I'm looking at a 2.5 inch measurement. And if we want to replace the handles, this way we know what size to get. So I'm going to write this down. I'm going to put the screws back in all these handles. It's a little hard with my video here. I can't see the screen, so I'm not sure if you can see what exactly I'm doing. And then we finish it off by putting the hardware in the bag to keep it all together. I take my measurement, I stick it in the bag so I don't forget. And then I also go through and I take any of the hardware that's going to be replaced. These didn't match. These were on the bottom doors, one on one side, one on the other. This one is broken. This one doesn't match. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just get rid of these, and we're going to replace them so that they do match. And we'll just toss those aside. The next thing I've got is the glass panels. As you can see on here, let me see if I can get my camera adjusted a little bit. These are the upper glass doors. There's 2 doors and 1 panel. I showed how to remove the panel in the previous video. There were 3 screws on each side. Once you get the doors off, you just take those 3 screws out of each side and you can remove the panels. On this, this is one of the doors. I've already removed all the hardware, and now I've got to get the glass out. If you turn them over, generally, you can see what you have holding the glass in. You have these small pieces of wood, one on each end and one on each side. And they're held in with little tiny staples. So I'm going to show you how to get those out of here so that you can get the glass out and hopefully not break the glass if you want to use it again. Move my camera so you can see a little bit better. I have my camera turned around backwards, so I have to look from the back to make sure it's right. All you need, just a flathead screwdriver, any kind of a thin scraper. I like to use a wood chisel because I can get them. I got different sizes, but they fit really well. And all you do is you start on the bottom or the top, or top and bottom, whichever one is which. Those are generally the last. The sides usually get put in first, and then the bottom. So when you remove them the opposite way. All you do is just slide your device in, whatever you choose to use, and lightly pry the wood away. The goal is to not, if you're going to reuse them, is to not break these and to not break your glass. If you put this in too deep, you'll chip your glass. So you want to be careful not to do that. And you just gently pry, trying not to break. And what happens, I will show you in a second, usually the wood will come off and leave the staples behind. So it'll just pull the staples through your wood. And just work it down until you get pried off. And then I just toss the stick aside. If I'm going to reuse them, we can repaint those. and then put them back in later with small tacks. And I don't know if you can see the staples get left behind sometimes. And you're going to want to pull those staples out in order to get that glass out. But you want to go around each side, top and bottom, get those out first. And you'll be able to see by the way that they're put in which ones you want to take out first and which ones are going to pop out easiest. Generally speaking, though, it's the top and the bottom ones are the ones you want to take out. Now, on the older hutches, they use these wood pieces in here. The newer hutches tend to use just a rubber strip, which is real easy. You just grab, you get one end pried out, and you just rip it out. And then you can repaint the rubber. If you want to repaint the rubber, if you're going to replace the glass, you can do that. I'm being careful on this one, exceptionally careful, because I don't know if we're going to reuse the glass yet. I have not been told what the plan is. So that one's out. And you just go along the edges and you pop these out. Trying not to break them. If you're not gonna reuse the glass and you're gonna put in chicken wire or something other than the glass that isn't gonna require all of this, the actual easiest way is just break the glass in a garbage can. And then you'll be able to get these out. You can break these out. You don't have to be so gentle. But again, because I don't know the plan for this hutch, I'm going to try and pull them out gently. 99% of the time, we do not reuse the glass. We put chicken wire if we're going to replace the doors on it. We usually only replace the glass if it's a custom piece that we're doing for a customer and they want the glass. But most of the time, we just toss it. We'll either toss it, or on some of them you have stained glass, and we have found that people like to use the stained glass, so we'll post it on Marketplace or offer up as a porch pickup, and people can come by and grab it and do whatever they want with it. That way it doesn't go to waste, and with stained glass you have lead, and you don't have to worry about that in your trash. So that's all four sides out. Now, in order to get the glass out, you got to get the staples. Hopefully you can still see this. I know it's difficult, and it's probably pretty close. But this way you don't have to look at my ugly mug. So, I just take I'll take a pair of needle nose, small needle nose, or a pair of cutters like this, depending on how hard they are to get out. And I'll just gently pull those out, remembering that that glass is there, so you don't want to chip the glass. A lot of times it's easy, just stick the needle nose in and you can just twist them and pull that right out. And they just slide right out. And again, you just toss those because you just, if you're going to replace them, you're just going to use small tacks to replace it with. You don't need to use staples. So you don't need to reuse them. And you just gently pull these out. Work your way around the outside. And on this one, I've got 2 on the bottom, 2 on the top, and each side looks like it has 3. This is the part where a lot of times you'll chip the glass if you're not careful. You'll put your needle nose in, not paying attention, go a little bit too deep, and you'll chip the glass. So you gotta just pay attention to what you're doing. One more. And then the glass just lifts right out, and you can set it aside. Now after that's done, what I like to do is I'll take a sanding block or sometimes even a sander if I've got it plugged in. And I'll go over my pieces just in the area where the hinges are, where any hardware might have been. Because what they do when they stain these pieces is they stain them with the hardware on them. So you've got the raw wood underneath, and then they stain and it leaves just a little bit of an edge. And you want to take that little bit of edge off so it doesn't show up through the paint. So I just take a sanding block really gently. And it's sanded. Nice and smooth. You don't need to take all the paint off. If you're using the paint that we use, Rethunk Junk by Laura, the enamel paint, you don't have to, on a piece like this, you do not have to strip the paint. And you can watch your other videos that show how to do the painting. So you do that and you're done. Now your doors are all off. Now the third thing I want to show, third thing I want to show is on one of the other videos, you'll notice I showed where one of the doors came off and it was coming apart. And it was this particular door here. It had worked itself loose. You can see that hopefully on here, where it's worked itself loose. It's got a little bit of a crack in the wood here. The top is the same way. So this piece is beginning to fall off. So that's got to be secured before we put it back together. And the same with on the top, the center piece. You can see here it just has pulled out and needs to go back together. So one of the things that I will do is I will put just a little tiny bit of wood glue on here. On both ends. I don't worry about getting too clean with it because it can be sanded off really easy once it's dried. And then you just squeeze the pieces back together. And I will take some clamps. I have a bunch of long clamps that are just for doing this kind of stuff. I'll just put it on and gently tighten this down. I don't want to go too much because what will happen is your door, if you go too much, it'll bow and then your door won't fit anymore. So I want to do this on each end. Tighten it. You just want to tighten it just enough that it pulls this gap together that's been created by the door coming apart. And you don't have to be too tight. Again, you don't want to warp your door, and you want to leave it just sitting long enough for the glue to dry. So now what I will do is I will go over the rest of this before it gets painted, and I will just sand these down smooth, and I'll address any other rough spots that might be there or need to be fixed. Just through the light. Just sand it down really quick, nice and smooth. Now it won't show. The same around this edge here, because this wasn't a door, this was actually a center piece. You can see again, when they do the staining, the piece is already in place. So you got a little bit of a ridge. So you just go around, hit it real light. And this way, when it's ready to be painted, the paint will sit nice and smooth on there, and you'll never be able to see those spots. Got these two down here. Oop, my messy garage. So now we're all done and ready for this to be painted. We've taken in the steps that I've done that hopefully the reels will show up. It's gone from a one-piece hutch. I figured out how to take the top off, so it's now two-piece, easier to move. Gone ahead and stripped all the hardware off. Strip the doors off. I'll fix the second door as soon as this one dries. I'll fix it. I'll use these same clamps, same glue, same method. Fix that second door. Finish sanding down all the doors where the hinges were. And this thing's ready to paint. And it's all ready to go. And my job is done until it's time to reassemble. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea on the prep work for one of these hutches to get it all nice and pretty. And now I just turn it over to Tanya and she finishes it all off until it's time to be reassembled. If you have any questions, go ahead and post them and we'll get back and hopefully be able to answer them. Hope you enjoyed. Welcome back to our hutch project. Hopefully you've been able to catch the previous videos I've done showing how to prep it, get it all ready to go to be painted, taking off, removing all the hardware. I showed how to do all the hardware on the doors as well as removing the glass from the top. Originally this hutch, if you remember, had a glass panel here in the center and then glass doors, one on each side. And it was one piece. It was bolted or screwed together really well. I've shown how to figure out how to make it the two-piece, back to two-piece, so it's a much easier piece to maneuver around. I showed how to take the glass out of those top doors, as well as fix the doors, a couple of doors that were broken. Now, one thing I mentioned previously was not sure what we were going to do with those glass doors on top, whether we were going to use chicken wire or if we were going to leave the doors off. I mentioned generally we use chicken wire. Occasionally we will replace the glass. I have a final decision now, and what we're going to do is we are going to take and leave the doors off of the top. And what that's going to do is that's going to open this up from a hutch on top to more of a display unit with no doors. The chicken wire sometimes can block a little bit of what you might have displayed in there. So we're going to open this up. And what I'm going to do is there were two pillars, one on each side here, and one was here. And I played around with it to see what options I might have and how to remove those pillars. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what I did on this side to remove these and make it completely open with no doors. I left this side intact. And what I found by playing around with it, and sometimes you just have to play around with it and see what's there. Because you can't tell by just looking that there are screws. What there are, there's two screws up here in the top. Right in here. There's two screws here. And there's two screws here on the bottom. Well, on the top, in order to get these two screws, you have to remove this whole top piece along here. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 8 other screws that have to come out first just to get to these top screws to remove them. So sometimes you have to make the choice. Do you want to remove those 8 just to get to those other ones? Or is it going to be easier to just remove things? So I'm going to show you what I did on this side. I'll duplicate it on this side. It's pretty simple, and let's get started. First thing we're going to do is we're going to find these screws on the bottom. These are very easy to access. I'm going to remove these screws. They're not very long, so it doesn't take much. And I'm using the electric screwdriver on this, or the rechargeable screwdriver, rechargeable driver, whatever you want to call it. It wouldn't fit well up underneath here, and I could lean this all down on its side if I wanted to make it a little bit easier to reach, or I can just do this the old-fashioned way. It only takes a second. They're not very long screws. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get these screws out on the bottom, and that's going to free up this board to move a little bit. Now keep in mind, we're getting rid of these pieces. Don't need them, not going to use them for anything. So if these get damaged, so be it, not a big deal. And that's how we're going to take those out. Rather than removing this whole top piece, there's still 2 screws up here that we can't get to very easily. So we're just going to pop this out, and I'm going to twist it, and this piece of wood, hopefully, like the other one did, will split. It's just going to split nice and easy. See how that just split right there? And the screws that are falling out here on the ground, these were the ones that actually held the centerpiece in. As I mentioned in the previous video, there were 3 on each side. So now what we just have these screws we have to deal with. So what I'm going to do, real simple, I'm going to take a hole punch, my hammer, and there's enough room on these. Just pop them up into place. That doesn't want to go as easily because there's another screw right here holding the top down, and it's hitting on that. So what I will do, I'll take some cutters. You can use a Dremel. I just don't have mine here at the house. That'll make it a lot easier. Take it, cut it down as far as you can. Hit it up inside. Notice I dropped a little bit. So we have now, move this camera so you can see, we have 2 screw holes there, and then we have the 2 screw holes up on top with the screws cut off or shoved up inside. Does it matter that those screws are up in those holes? No. I'm not going to use them again. They're not in the way. I just take a little bit of wood putty, mix it up a little bit. I use the wood filler from Ace in the natural. It's easy to work with. It's paintable, sandable. It dries fairly quick. And I'm just going to use it really quick, fill these holes. Don't have to be neat because you're just going to sand it once it's dry. Do that on both sides on the bottom. And then turn around on the top. You want to do it on the top. Just fill those holes in. Make sure the screws are pushed up in the hole. Just fill those holes in. And then once it's dry, sand it smooth. And now your screws are in, your screws are up, out of the way. The only people that know they're even there are you and I. A little bit off the edge there so there's less to sand. And then once it's dry, you sand it, paint it, and you now have Move the camera back so you can see it. Now have the hutch. No more doors on top, no more glass, but you have an open display on top. Easy to access. You don't have to worry about the glass ever breaking. You don't have to worry about things hiding behind chicken wire that you might put on those doors. And now you just take the doors from the top and you can keep them for other projects or just toss them. I will keep them because I'm sure she'll find another use for them somewhere along the line. And that is that. Hope you enjoyed.